Welcome all into the Preferred Experience, the podcast. I'm your host, Will Barrett, as always, coming to you from the heart of the Fountain City, the preferred community, Prattville, Alabama, and also on the master control across from me is the Millzer. Sir, how you doing? It's been a hot week.
Yeah, I've been doing good, man. We just getting everything's geared up for next month or the end of this month. Well, now we are in August now, so we're talking less than 18 days for the insanity kicks in.
I mean, I walked into the studio today, and you already had that look in that left eye kind of twitching already, because you know football season's coming up, and that just takes years off your life every year.
Yeah, exactly.
I think your initial life expectancy is probably about 160.
See, I'm a non-smoker, but it counteracts football season. Just counteracts that. So it's just like I'm like a 2-pack a day smoker.
Yeah. I mean, you probably take football. Prattville football is probably taking a solid 30 years off your life.
Easy, very easy.
Just in the preparation.
Yep.
So you're probably only going to live to be like 90 now. So that's unfortunate for you, but I mean, you know, we all got to go sometime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Coach Wallace told me I had to stick around for at least 10 more years, so he could finish up. So. Oh,
so he's going to play. He's going to coach for 10 more years.
Yeah, that's what he said. He needed me to be here for 10 more years.
Okay. Well, good. We're good. That's good. It's good to know we got that kind of longevity ahead of us. Well, we've got a fantastic guest on the Preferred Experience today. I mean, I don't feel real comfortable with her in the room because her education level far exceeds anything that we are ever going to be able to accomplish in life. The first doctor we've ever had on the show, and I will give you a little introduction to her. If you will allow me. This person is a class of 1989 Prattville High School. Okay, the good days, you know, the 80s. This is a child of the 80s that's here today, and so you know she's going to know all about pop culture. She's going to know all about style. She's going to know all about the things that make a person a complete person if you grew up in the 80s, which that was the only complete people ever. She studied early childhood education at Auburn University. She got a master's degree. And as an education specialist degree at Auburn University Montgomery. She went on to get her PhD at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. She's the former senior director at Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education. She has been the director of the Alabama Reading Initiative at the State Department of Education. She was the director of the Office of Early Learning and Family Support of Alabama Department of Early Learning Childhood Education, and she is also an assistant professor of education at Faulkner University. Needless to say, the most educated person we ever had in this building.
So what you're saying is the anti-Chip Powell.
The opposite.
The
of Chip
exact
Powell.
opposite.
Yeah. But don't ask him that. Our guest is Dr. Tracye Strichik. Welcome to the Preferred Experience.
Thank you. I did grow up in the 80s before social media, before they could capture all the things that we did wrong on the weekends. So none of it exists. I can't imagine living in this era.
You know, people say all the time, like, I don't know, these kids, I mean, I never heard of any of this stuff growing up. And it's like, well, it's because there wasn't social media. The kids really hadn't changed all that much. Just what you see them do and what they're being videoed doing has changed a lot. So
correct. We were wonderful in 1980.
Oh, yeah.
Very well mannered.
Oh, of course. I'm class of 97, so I'm with you. Also, no social media, but thank the Lord there was no social media.
Agree.
We'd all be canceled today.
Yeah, we had we were talking just before we got started. The poster I have up here, the 1987 team poster, and the Prattville Lions up there. I was on the team, and then there's Miss Tracy over there as a cheerleader on that.
Yeah,
and Stacy's. You know, on the win and loss, he's keeping up till about half season. And
yeah,
he got a little tired of putting loss on there.
It was pretty much after Lee beat us 51-7 in Crampton Bowl. It was just kind of let's just get this over with.
You don't want to know what happens after this.
We don't. It's not up here.
No. Some things are better left to the imagination. As far as I know, we won all those games.
Yep, I like it. I like your attitude.
Because there is no social media from '87. So, Dr. Strichik, can I call you Dr. Strichik?
You absolutely can.
I really like that.
Or you can just call me Tracy.
Well, whatever you're comfortable with.
Either one.
Because I know there's a doctor in the White House that prefers her to be addressed as doctor.
I'm perfectly fine with Tracy.
All right. Well, Tracy, you've got an interesting family, a wonderful family, a family rooted in this city. Tell us a little bit about your, of course, class of '89, but where you went from there and how you got to this point you're at now.
So I was born here in Prattville, and graduated from high school here in 1989 and went to Birmingham Southern actually first because I was on a ballet scholarship.
A ballet scholarship? A
ballet scholarship, yes. I used to be do ballet at the Alabama Dance Theater in Montgomery, and so had a ballet scholarship to Birmingham Southern.
That's impressive.
And messed my knee up the first year, so transferred to Auburn and really wanted to teach dance one day, and so teaching was kind of in my blood. So I began looking for majors and attending some education classes, and that's when I knew I wanted to do the very young children. I don't know how people do high school or junior high, but I wanted to do the babies. And so I finished my degree, went to teach at Prattville Kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Left there, taught at Daniel Pratt when Daniel Pratt first opened up. So I taught first grade, third grade, and then I decided probably when I got pregnant and I needed some time away from Robert and the other child that I would get my master's. Maybe that's why I have so many degrees. I needed some time away.
They all coincide with the babies, yeah.
And so I went and got my master's degree, and then I began working at AUM. So when I was working at AUM, they were really encouraging us to get our PhD. So I began it, and I don't think I would have finished. I would have began if I didn't work at AUM. So I left there to go to the Department of Early Childhood and had so much coursework that I said I have to finish this. Mm-hmm. And so when I finished it, I kept working at the Department of Early Childhood, became pre-K director. Meanwhile, have 3 children who all went to Prattville. I have our oldest, Robert and I's oldest daughter is actually in Maryland right now. She's a travel nurse. She left Dallas, and now she's traveling, and she's in Maryland. And then our middle child was a teacher, but she's not teaching anymore. She's working for the Department of Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention.
That's awesome.
And then our youngest son is a senior at Auburn, which Robert struggles with saying that word, Auburn. But all 3 of our children went to Auburn.
I was going to say, and you got 3 kids going through Auburn, you yourself an Auburn product, and you have hitched yourself to one of the most staunch Bammers I've ever met.
Trust me, I know. Yes. Football season's difficult at our house. And I was a Tigerette at Auburn. So
get out of here.
Yeah, we have Tigerette reunions. He doesn't go.
Oh, he stays back?
He does.
So that's when all the studying for the degrees would come about whenever football season. So you could separate yourself.
You figured it out, Stacy. Yes, that's exactly right. So then I went to the department, the State Department of Education, when they were implementing the literacy law. And so now I'm retired from the state and started doing some contract work, was working for Faulkner, and the contract work kind of got bigger than the Faulkner job. And so just took a new job like in the last 2 weeks, working for the Alabama Expanded Learning Alliance. So we do advocacy for out-of-school programs, after-school and summer programs.
You have to be careful when you use those acronyms because AELA is totally different from ALEA.
Yeah.
ALEA is the state troopers, and the ALA is the Alabama Expanded Learning. Right?
I know we had a struggle because people were saying ALA like that, and we were like, it had another emphasis, ALA, or I can't remember.
Aaliyah and Ayla.
Ayla.
Yeah. It's a pretty name. Well, that's fascinating because now you made a choice early on to work with the babies, and now you're teaching the college kids. Mm-hmm. So you got both ends of the spectrum. Of high school and K through 12. What's it like?
They're about the same.
I was about to say, what's the difference?
They all have excuses, but the kindergartners at least tell you the truth. They'll make up excuses. But they're both wonderful. And it was wonderful talking about my passion, so early childhood, and knowing that I was helping future teachers know what to do with babies and with the children, the very young learners. So it was fun, but they're very much alike. So I think teaching kindergarten and seniors is probably a lot alike too.
Well, with such an extensive education background, not only in your education, but also in what you've done as a career, it only makes sense that you have chosen to give back to your community by running for the Board of Education and winning District 1. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was wasn't a hard decision to make. Because I did 26 years in public school, and I came from Watauga County and then went to the state level, and kind of figured out at the state level that the only way to make real change is to work at the local level. And so I just wanted to give back, and I was retired, and I wanted to get back in and work with practitioners, people that are actually working with children. I used to have a boss one time that said, we should always listen to those that smell like feet. And I was like, what is she talking about? I had to ask her, and she said, have you ever been in a kindergarten room when the children are napping? It smells like feet because they take their shoes off. Probably the same as a locker room.
I imagine it does, because those kindergartners don't like to wear socks.
I know, and
so those
sweat.
feet get.
But it's awesome. So you should always listen to the teachers that are closest to the children.
Well, that's a great rule to live by right there, because they're the ones that know.
That's right,
for sure. And the scenery is always changing. I mean, from year to year, no classroom is the same, and so getting the I guess the advice from the boots on the ground, that's the way to do it.
It is the way to do it.
So you obviously would not have run for the Board of Education unless you saw some things that you really wanted to see changed. What is it about our school system that you think we need to modify greatly?
Well, our funding is the lowest in the state. Everyone knows that. But our median income is up there in the top 5. Mm-hmm. We need more money. Our superintendent is making a lot less than other superintendents with the same amount of students or less. Mm-hmm. Our principals are making less, so other school systems are recruiting our principals and paying them a lot more to come work for them. Teachers at times are not feeling supported, and we're struggling, and that's not just in our county, it's all over the state. We're struggling with recruiting teachers. But I see that such potential in our school system. I see where there's so many things we could do and take advantage of. And so I just was ready to throw my hat in the ring and say, let me try it and see, why not? If you're going to be one of those people that looks for things to change, why don't you jump in and help make the change? Yeah.
And I've heard it said from some very wise people in this community that have said, people will drive over bad roads to get to good schools. They won't drive over good roads to get to bad schools.
True.
And that's what grew this community so quickly in the early 2000s, late 90s, was that, hey, we have a school system that is safe and effective. And now we've seen the growth of our community continue to grow, but not at the rate that it was around 2000 to 2010. And because other school systems have taken the initiative to come up, to improve themselves. And we've got to take that next administrative step.
We do. Our funding per pupil is low, too. Mm-hmm. And I would go to houses and meet people in the district, which was a lot of fun, by the way. I got to meet a lot of people's concerns, and a lot of people were very pleased with our school system. But I would have people that were retired and say, I don't really have a vested interest. I don't have children in the school. And I would say, you absolutely have a vested interest. You have a house here. Mm-hmm. Good schools increase your property value. You go eat in a restaurant, you want that to be the most educated person waiting on you. And so you're exactly right. Good schools make good communities, and people move to communities for schools.
Exactly.
And so I think we have the potential to be the best school system in the state.
I have no doubt about that. From a location standpoint, from a median household income standpoint, to an overall quality of life outside of the school systems. I mean, it's very unusual to have a city this size and a county this size. So what city population around and within a quarter mile of the city is over 40,000 people. This county is 55,000 total. So there's only 15,000 people that don't live right at the city, yet we're a county school system. That's quite unusual, I would think.
It is unusual. There's a lot of city school systems in our state. But I think we can be very successful being a county school system. I definitely do. I think I look at some cities that have city school systems, and they may have, 2 or 3 in a 20-mile radius, and they're having to pay 3 high-powered or high-raised superintendents and have different principals. So I think us having a county system works, and that we can make it better.
If anybody can make it right, this county can.
Agree.
Especially with the firepower that's coming in to the board between you and the other ones that are coming along, like Kim Crockett, who is another.
She's got great energy.
She also listens to the stinky feet people.
She does listen to the stinky feet people. Hey, when you supervise people and you say, who's got the stinky feet? Who smells like stinky feet? They don't like that.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. Well, one of the things you said that has been your passion is working with the babies, the pre-Ks. And that is something that you've gone all over the country, educating people on the value of pre-K. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't really understand the value of. It looks like, you know, we're gluing stuff to paper and we're learning how to color and we're learning how to count. Big deal. Why is pre-K so important?
Pre-K is so important, and there's a ton of data out there to show how important pre-K is. It's because if children do not come to kindergarten ready to learn, ready for kindergarten, and kindergarten readiness looks different than, you know, knowing your ABCs and how to color, like you said. It's knowing how to sit and have self-control. It's knowing how to have a conversation with somebody, that give and take, in addition to knowing your colors and your letters and your sounds and things. But if a child doesn't come to kindergarten ready, and we see that in Alabama. Some children are coming to kindergarten at a 3-year-old level. I mean, it's hard to make up 2 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes you never do. And there's been data to show that those that go to pre-K just 1 year, 4 years old, just 1 year, that they're less likely to be referred for special ed. They're more likely to graduate from high school. They're less likely to be referred for special ed. And this is Alabama-specific data that we can see. And so a lot of the students and the children that we see in our pre-K program, Alabama's at like, I think 40-something, mid-40%, are areas where children need conversations with teachers and they need conversations with other children. There was also a study that looked at the million-word gap, that students and children that were living in high affluent areas had so many more vocabulary words than those children that were living in poverty. And so there's a huge gap there. And so you're providing that opportunity, that 1 year, for them to get ready for kindergarten and be successful, to catch up with all of the other students that are ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a practical example of what you're saying there. My son, he went through pre-K at.
You talking about JC?
Talking about JC, John Carter. He just went through pre-K a couple of years ago at First Methodist Church. They got a program there through kindergarten, and he's a tweener kid. Birthday in June. He could go either way. So we had him in there on the early side. Well, he wasn't, quote, getting it as in the pre-K. So they suggested one more year pre-K. So that would put him on where he would normally be anyway. So once we did that, he's ahead of the game now.
Oh.
I mean, that 1 year just turned it around for him. He breezed through kindergarten with no problem, and now he's about to start Prattville Primary here next week. So
Ready
to
You're going to be thankful that you gave him that gift.
Yeah.
But if you really look at 90% of the brain is developed by the age of 5. And so much of our money in education goes towards the upper grades and very little goes towards the birth to 5 population. And so I think we have to reevaluate sometimes. I mean, I think we should need to be doing foreign language when they're very young and their brain is
when it's like a sponge still.
Exactly, yes.
Still growing wrinkles.
Yep.
And I've seen 3-year-olds that can speak Spanish.
Absolutely.
Way better than.
And if your phone is not working, just hand it to a 3 or 4-year-old.
Right.
They'll fix it for you.
Yeah, I got a 7-year-old that can speak YouTube-ish. Whatever language they have on those videos, he can speak it.
I've even seen some articles that correlate prison, that the odds of going to prison with pre-K.
That's right.
You have a much lower percentage of people in prison that actually attended a pre-K.
That's right. There was a Perry preschool project done, and it's there was a longitudinal study, and they showed that those that had an early intervention with early childhood, they were less likely to go to prison, and they were less likely to get divorced, and they were more likely to make like 20 to 30,000 more than their peers and get an advanced degree.
Wow.
I know. So the benefits, and an economist did some of this work, and he actually won a Nobel Prize for it. So and you have done well. And Alabama kind of used what was happening in Georgia and other states to build our program because. Luckily, Stacy had a good experience in pre-K, but some don't. And so if a child has a program that's not quality and a teacher's yelling at them, sit down and shut up, that actually be detrimental to the child. That creates trauma. And so Alabama decided we had to do it right. Our pre-K teachers had to make exactly what our K-12 teachers were making so we could recruit.
Yeah, like in my situation, if that teacher would have just ramrodded him through on into kindergarten and he wasn't ready for kindergarten, I mean, you don't know what that'll do.
Sometimes it doesn't show up until third grade.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what that'll do to him as far as stunning his confidence.
That's right.
He could feel like he'd be behind all the time, and you don't know what kind of effect that'll have on him down the road. Whereas, so now, like I said, he's pretty gung ho and ready to go. I mean, he's not intimidated by school anymore.
That's awesome.
Right.
He's a leader.
Yeah,
that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Now, you've recently taken on this, with the Alabama Expanded Learning Alliance. We talked about that earlier.
Yes.
What exactly is that initiative?
So it is the Learning Alliance is based out of it's a 50-state alliance. So all 50 states have what they call an after-school network. Mm-hmm. And after school also includes summer learning. And so it's funded by the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. And Alabama is one of 50. And our goal is to shape policy, develop partnerships, and push for quality. Because just like I was saying with pre-K, if it's not quality, why do it?
Right.
And so pushing for quality. And so much money is going into summer learning and tutoring in our state, especially with the new literacy law. And then we have a numeracy law, a numeracy act, literacy act, and a numeracy act that calls for summer school, summer programs. You don't want to say summer school because nobody wants to go to summer school, right?
Right.
Summer camp. So summer camp where you make it a fun way for those children that are not proficient, not where they need to be, to go in the summer. And so there's state money that's going to school systems and community, and then the school systems are in turn partnering with some community-based organizations. So there's so much money going into summer programming and after school that we're trying to ensure that it's real quality. And the first time this year, Governor Ivey actually put in her budget, and it was accepted by the legislature, a $1.5 million to go to summer and after school. And so this funding will go to community-based summer and after-school programs. So we're excited about that. So it's the first time ever, and it's a new line item in the Education Trust Fund.
Thank you, Mama Kay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, school education is very important to her. So
yeah, I love her. I think she does so. She's been so good for this state in many, many ways. But one of those also is in education. And she also, the legislature also did a $22.5 million increase in pre-K. So that'll allow Alabama's first-class pre-K, who's been number one in the nation. I was going to say that. Like 13 to 14 years. Exactly. I can't remember. I lose count now. It'll allow them to get up to 45% of our 4-year-olds in the state. And we think possibly that 60% will be, saturation, because some people do choose to go to their church or someone to come in their home, and that's okay. And then she did $1 million to computer science and $2 million to advanced placement. So that is fantastic. The legislature and Governor Ivey. So it was money well spent. Money well spent. Yep. Absolutely. Well, you also mentioned part of the Alabama Expanded Learning Alliance is this after school thing. Mm-hmm. And it's not just what happens between 3 and 6, but also in the summers as well. Correct. And there's these summer learning programs, like summer reading programs, and I don't know, from what I understand, from what I hear, the opinion of it is mixed, especially if you ask high school and junior high students, why do I have to read these books? Well, my brain needs a rest. Is there a benefit to the overall health of the student in having these summer programs, or does the brain need some rest? I'm asking a doctor of education to get a real answer. Well, the answer is both. You can't, and you and I would not want to go to a summer program where we're being tutored for 4 hours and drill and skill. It has to be something fun. And summer programs are an opportunity for children and students to get opportunities they may not have in school, like horseback riding. There's baseball camps. There's lots of different partnerships. So an academic portion so that you can catch up. You could be behind and you can catch up and you don't have that summer slide. Yeah. But you also need that enrichment. And STEM is very big in some of our after-school programs. So I know summer programs are not that popular for high school, and we see that. I was visiting a program the other day, and the director said, I'm full, and I have 200 parents, and this was elementary school. I have 200 parents on a wait list, and she said, and they are blowing up my phone. And she showed me.
Because what are you going to do with that child? She said, there's no other, the YMCA's full. And this wasn't in our town, but that child's now going to have to go home and stay by themselves until mom comes home at 5:30. And that's whenever bad things happen. You don't know what's going to happen. They're
Latchkey
unsupervised.
kids.
Yes. So
It's not the 80s anymore.
Exactly. But the parents are freaking out and calling, going, "What? I've got to get off this wait list." And she said, no one ever gets off the wait list. We fill up. And so I just think about them all the time. What will they do with their young children when they're at work?
Exactly. It's a tough situation, especially when you have two parents that both work.
That's right.
Or one parent household, and the mom or dad has to work. And you mentioned something a minute ago that I found interesting. You mentioned the STEM, the increase in active STEM. But something you've been a proponent for is getting girls involved in STEM.
Correct.
And there's a definite difference in the number of in the STEM students. It's predominantly like overly majority male. Why do you think that is? What's it going to take to get more girls involved in the STEM program?
Well, I think it's going to take intentional efforts. And there are some national and Alabama efforts to get particularly girls involved in STEM. A lot of girls think it's not, or even some teachers think, girls don't do math. They do English and they do language arts, but girls can. They can do engineering. They can do math. They can do
better
science.
at it than guys. They have bigger
That's
brain,
right.
more brain power.
That's right.
And for those people that don't know, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Correct.
And
correct.
Those are the things that will pretty much guarantee you a spot somewhere in the workforce if you get a degree in those related fields. And for the longest time, it was mostly male and mostly white. And then there was some minority programs that came around, like at Auburn, like Bell South had a minority engineering program that started changing that. But still, there was a shortage of females. And the female engineers that I've come across in my professional career are so gifted, very smart, and a lot of times more capable than any male in that role because they just think differently.
And a lot of times the girls don't have role models or they don't have a mentor. Mm-hmm. So simple things like a girl who shows interest in STEM, connecting her with a mentor, someone to coach her and go, you absolutely can do this. Let's find what you're good at. Because there's not, like you said, there's not that many women in the field. And so there's been some very intentional efforts, one being the Million Girl Moonshot, meaning they wanted 1 million girls in STEM by a certain time. And so Alabama, one of the projects they did was choose 12 girls, and they were involved in an out-of-school program per year, and they did STEM, and then at the end they went to space camp.
Wow.
And so really nurturing,
awesome.
It is awesome. So really nurturing those STEM activities, if it's not in school, then it's in after school or summer programming.
Have you ever been to the space camp and seen what they do
It's
up there?
awesome, isn't it?
My
It
goodness.
is. Right here in Alabama.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe we have that kind of program right here in Huntsville.
I know.
My son got to go to space camp a couple years back and just fell in love with this space camp program. And what they're able to do and what they're able to introduce them to, I mean, real astronauts, walking them through the paces. And they do essentially everything except launch into space. Fantastic program. If anybody's got if you got a kid with any kind of interest in STEM at all, get them to space camp and it'll put it into orbit, like, pardon the pun. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure we talk about is something that I know is very near and dear to your heart, is the Alabama Literacy Act. That is something that has really changed the way we look at things and the way we approach things.
Yep.
Can you educate us on the Alabama Literacy Act and what it means for the students in this county, in the state?
In the state, yeah. So 2019, the Alabama legislators passed the Alabama Literacy Act, and it was because our literacy scores are 50 out of 50. We're at the bottom.
Unbelievable.
And so we have, more than 50% of our students in Alabama are not proficient at third grade. Mm-hmm. They're not able to read on a third grade level, and that's alarming.
Very.
And so with the act came funding, and that funding had some stipulations. So one of them being if a student wasn't reading on grade level by the end of the third grade, they would need to be retained. Well, that's kind of scary because that could be over 50% of our population, and we probably have to move our fourth grade teachers down to third grade.
Exactly.
And luckily, the legislature did postpone it for 2 years. I think that's what they did. Yep, they postponed it for 2 years, the retention part. But with it came money, and so school systems get funding for assessments. So in kindergarten through third, they'll do an assessment at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. They got money if there's a deficiency. They start trying to catch it at kindergarten and do tutoring. And there's also parent plans that have to go if your child is not reading on grade level, because some parents get to third grade and go, I didn't know my child wasn't reading on grade level. So now in the Literacy Act, they will know the minute that they're not proficient, then they'll have what they call a student reading improvement plan and a meeting with the families and come up with a plan for tutoring or summer programming. There's dyslexia-specific interventions because we have a population, of course, of children with dyslexia. It also came with Alabama hasn't adopted English language arts curriculum in probably, 10 years. And so there was a committee that looked at all the curriculum in the nation and chose the best of the best. And so it came with funding for a comprehensive core curriculum. And then that kind of teaches everyone in the class. And then when you have those children that are struggling, another curriculum for intervention. Funding for tutors, tutors that are trained in the science of reading. And also funding for professional development and coaching. And so each school system that's a K-3 school, the Numeracy Act is K-5, Literacy Act is K-3. They receive funding for a literacy coach at that school. And then professional development is provided to those literacy coaches. And we noticed that some of our teachers were coming out not knowing what the science of reading is or how the best way to teach children. And so there was a lot of efforts to help those in higher ed look at their coursework and realign it with the science of reading and choosing textbooks, training some of the faculty because things have changed and we know a lot more from the research that's out there now about how children read, even from when I started teaching. 26 years ago. There's a lot more research out there to show. Like when I was teaching, you would hold up a letter and say, what sound does it make? And so now we know from looking at brain scans that you should always start with the sounds first and talk to the children about how their mouth, what sounds, shapes their mouth make, and then move to letters.
That's fascinating. They can pick that up from brain waves.
Exactly.
What were the science behind early education? People don't know this. Things have changed greatly, like you said, since we were coming up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and what they're doing now. Like my daughter is going into second grade, and in kindergarten, first grade, she was bringing home her assignments at night, and they were and half of the work was these nonsense words. Mm-hmm. They're not words, but they're jumbles of. Then you had to sound it out together.
Correct.
I'd never seen a nonsense word before. I thought this was ridiculous.
Silly.
What are we teaching these kids? But
the sounds.
But they picked up reading.
That's right.
Very quickly because of nonsense words.
Well, they truly knew the sounds. Mm-hmm. They weren't guessing at the word in the context or looking at the picture, so they knew the sounds. And automaticity is very important. So in learning how to read, they've learned that it's very important.
Automaticity.
Yes. So teaching if you're reading real slow and having to stop to sound out your words, you struggle with comprehension. So early on, you want to teach those children to be automatic and fluent in their reading. So there's a lot that came out. And one of the interesting, if I go back to early learning, Dr. Patricia Kuhl out of Washington talks about the importance of talking to your baby. And so if you have a baby, you should be talking to your baby all the time. But she had a little hat it's not a hat, but a brain scan, and she would look at the baby's brain when the mom was talking, and they call it like motherese. And so she would go, hello, how are you? And the brain of the infant would just light up. And
so not baby talk, real talk.
This was called motherese, the one that she did the test on. Hey, how are you? Like a mother talks to her baby.
That does make me feel good.
And the brain would light up. Well, then they did the mom the same way on an iPad and recorded the mom, and then put the iPad in front of the child, and there was no activity in the brain.
Wow.
So babies have to have a face. They struggle with a flat screen. So it's one of the things that we're probably going to see with COVID is because there was so much screen time with babies. So many professionals and pediatricians recommend very limited screen time before the age of 2 or 3.
And that's hard to come by these days.
It's very hard to come by. Yes, I was guilty. We had baby Mozart. They told us how great it was for your baby's brain.
Right, but what it comes down to is face-to-face communication is the number one thing to enhance a person's overall well-being. I think we've always known that.
That's true. We're struggling with it now, aren't we? After COVID and Zooms
People
forever.
don't know how to have conversations anymore. Don't know how to sit across the table with someone and have a decent conversation with give and take, because you can't just mute this person anymore, or I can't just turn my screen off.
It's a kindergarten readiness skill. Still a senior readiness skill too, a high school.
Exactly. You mentioned dyslexia too earlier. I mean, this has only been something that's come to the forefront as a real problem in the last 20 years. I mean, kids before that suffered with dyslexia. Dyslexia is not a new disease, but it's newly recognized. And so surviving high school was tremendously impossible for some of these kids that had dyslexia, because we didn't know what it was. Well, the kid just can't read, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so they learn, they adapt, and they learn to read in their own certain way. But now there's help for kids like that.
Correct. And it needs to happen early. So while we try to catch them in kindergarten, because if you learn how to read by 3rd grade and you're dyslexic, you don't usually have those problems. I mean, you still have some problems in high school, but there is a myth, that people think that those students with dyslexia have a low IQ, and that's not the case. Usually there's much higher IQ, and they have tremendous comprehension skills. If you read something aloud, they can give you details and tell you so many things. But for a long time, teachers didn't have the skills to know, and people just didn't know how to teach children with dyslexia. And we do know now. It's strict phonics, lots of repetition, finding out where that struggle is, teaching those children how to decode. So we do know now, and that intervention has to start early, because if it's later, there's some sense of embarrassment that you're being pulled out and having to do repetition. But some of the strategies that you use for children with dyslexia are also very beneficial for all children.
Sure.
So we've learned that with the science of reading.
And up until even in recent history, I can go back to 5, 6, 7 years ago to a very close family friend of ours had a young son entering 1st grade at a very respected school across the river. Won't say the name to protect the guilty, but he had a dyslexia diagnosis, but they didn't have the staff to work with him. And so the mom was willing to bring in a private tutor to help him during the day. They wouldn't allow it. So they end up withdrawing the kid from the school, putting him in a school that will allow this. But
most people don't have those resources and that funding to be able to do that.
Right. But now this Alabama Literacy Act is changing all that.
Correct.
Which is a wonderful thing.
And we're training. Alabama put a lot of money into training teachers on dyslexia, having interventionists that know how to work with children that have signs of dyslexia. So we have no excuse now. We know what to do. When you know better, you do better.
Absolutely. A couple of things I wanted to mention while we've got you is you recently took a trip to Whitefish, Montana.
I did, and yes.
My understanding is that once you go to Big Sky Country, you really don't want to come back.
You don't. We stayed for like 9 days. So when I was in college, I wanted to go be an intern at the White House. And so I got a job. And then like a month or so before I went, somebody's like, you don't get paid. I was like, I can't afford that. I mean, I don't have anywhere to live. I thought they were going to pay me. So I was just standing outside in Auburn and saw on a bulletin board that they were hiring at Glacier National Park. And so I went there and worked that summer. Wow. And so ever since then, they have had reunions every 5 years. And so Robert went once with me, and it wasn't his thing. And so we started planning the family vacation, and I saw this year, and I knew I wanted to go to the reunion. And I saw how much the plane tickets were, and I was like, I know you don't want to go. And he's like, well, I mean, I'll be fine. I was like, I'm not dragging you up a mountain and you complaining, because it's not his thing. And Madison said, she saw where he was getting it out, and she's like, can I go with Dad? I was like, you absolutely can.
Definitely.
So it was fabulous. They went on a cruise. And we went to Montana and hiked and camped and did all of the things that they don't want to do. And it was fabulous. Fabulous.
Well, he's probably still a little bit sour over the fact that it took you one campaign to reach an office and it took him 3?
I don't think he is. I don't think he is. We just learned from him. He helped me on my campaign too, so we learned all the pitfalls and the mistakes.
And he's done a remarkable job as our representative at District 6 on the City Council. And I know that you're going to do a fantastic job as representing our District 1 Board of Education. But now you've got not only a house divided between college allegiances, but also you got 2 elected officials in the same house, and that doesn't happen very often. This is kind of a very unique situation.
And we're empty nesters.
Oh my!
So
goodness.
we can't just ignore it and go talk to. We do talk to the dogs a lot. That we have a Yorkie and a Shorkie, so we do talk to the dogs a lot. And we don't always see eye to eye, and that's okay. We never have on all situations. But it is going to be difficult. So I'll know in January. And I'll say things and he won't agree with it. And we get in an argument. And I go, so it's going to be interesting.
Just tell him, trust the doctor.
So you brought up it'll be January before you take office. So because you're running unopposed. So, and we asked this to Kim Crockett too, and I'm going to ask you about it. How big of an advantage or a disadvantage do you think it is having that period of time to prepare to go instead of just getting thrown to the wolves right after the November election? You know, you got a month to get ready and go. So how much are you the kind of person that were like, throw me in, I'm ready to go now? Or you're like, hey, this gives me time to get my ducks in a row and find out what I need to know before I even walk in the door?
Well, I can do both, but I prefer to have my ducks in a row before I walk in the door. So I think it is a huge advantage. And I know the Alabama School Board Association, once everyone's in place, will do some orientation for us and provide support to us. But I'm happy that I have those few months because it kind of lets me learn the system, what's our funding. I've been Googling, getting in these data sheets to see, where are we? Are we showing improvements? Has our population gone down? And over the last 3 years, our student population stayed about the same. Mm-hmm. Our student retention has really gone, we struggled with retaining teachers this year, but so has the whole state. So looking at the data and saying, what do we need to do? So it is an advantage. And sort of building relationships with Kim Crockett and others that we need to build them with.
And you brought up teacher retention and everything, and of course, coming off of COVID it's affected everybody in the country as far as that. But do you see that as the only reason why we're having issues with teacher retention, or is it more of we're not paying them enough?
I think you can't pinpoint it to one thing. I think I don't think teachers. I was a teacher. I didn't go there for the pay. I went there for the children.
Right.
And there's so many requirements on teachers right now, nationally, state. We have a new literacy law that gives funding, but there's also accountability, and that causes teachers to do paperwork and testing that they've never done on top of other testing. So there's so much paperwork. There's so many requirements that are out of the teacher's hands. So that's one of the reasons. And I don't, there are times when we could give teachers professional development that's not on a Saturday, but get them a sub and provide that professional development, or allow them to enter their data when you have a substitute. There's things that can be done. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to look at is some extra funding in our K-3 grades so that we could hire an aide or an auxiliary teacher in those K-3 grades to give that teacher some relief, because she's everything. She's the janitor, she's the nurse, she's mommy, she's daddy, she's everything.
Because you see these programs, a lot of the teachers that were Prattville people, they will get into these programs elsewhere, and then once they get certified and get through all of their education, then they'll come back and start teaching here. Why we need that? Like you said, we need a better access for them to be able to just go straight into school here and not have to jump to these other systems to, for teachers, assistants, programs and everything. Because I see so many go away. Now, I'm not talking about a little bit away, a long bit away. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking, you go into Auburn's and Birmingham's and schools like that, when we should have our schools to the level where you will want to be to teach. You want to learn how to teach here and then teach here.
It's got to become a destination system.
Yes, that's the point.
You're right.
And like you said,
and that's a statewide issue too, because some universities have rules that you can only intern within a 20-mile radius, and so they're working there. And why? Why don't you want them to teach at the school that they're, they've got a jump start. Mm-hmm. They know the system. They know all the people.
But like you said, that it's not about the pay for latest teachers, but resources and ratios, I think, matter more than anything
Teachers
else.
come out of pocket. So I know I was a teacher. I was broke in August because I was at Walmart every other day buying stuff for my classroom. And I love hanging out with my kindergartners, but I'm in a room 8 hours a day with just me and kindergartners.
Right.
Sometimes I need to look at an adult and say, can you go grab me a Diet Coke? Will you watch them while I go to the bathroom? So just someone there. And so pre-K has that model. When we were building pre-K, there's a lead teacher that's certified, but there's also an auxiliary teacher, and she has the equivalent of a certificate called a CDA, equivalent of a community college, a 2-year degree. So it was helpful, and a lot of teachers leave to go to pre-K because there is that extra support.
No, I would. Sounds like a great deal. Well, Dr. Strichik, Tracy, I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you.
I know this is the first time doing a podcast, but I'll say you did it much better than your husband did.
I haven't listened to his podcast.
He was fantastic.
Well, we were kind of talking beforehand how we got started a little early today because normally, like we said, the males that come in here come in on 2 wheels, jump out and say, hey, let's start talking. Dr. Strichik walking in here with a fistful of darn papers 15 minutes early and prepared.
This is like PhD level stuff over here.
Unlike some other city councilman that just blew in here and sat down and started talking about beer league softball.
But equally as effective.
I was about to say, usually he's pretty early.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, it's definitely, you could tell this family is an opposites work together situation.
Yes.
We are definitely.
Stronger
he
together.
met me when I was at Auburn, so he can't blame that. Yeah.
So did he actually come to Auburn to meet you?
We met at a bar, Cat and Harry's.
Yes.
And so I was in college, so he would drive to the weekends to Auburn to visit me. So he knew what he was getting into.
That's love for him.
It is love for him.
That he would drive. To
Auburn
to
every
Auburn.
weekend. Yes.
It's not a short trip from Tuscaloosa.
He can't even say the word Auburn. He calls it, something else. I don't know what he calls it.
I can imagine what he calls it. Probably not safe for family radio or family podcast. But I want to introduce you to something that will help you. I don't know if it's going to strengthen your resolve to make our education system stronger, or if it's going to cause you to lose hope in our education system. And that is our poetic justice moment with Chip Powell and Lewis Mills. And Millzer, you had something to say before we get into this.
Yeah. Well, we all know and love Chip Powell.
Of course.
But knowing and loving him, you know that he will, as we term it, will pull a Chip Powell.
Yes.
So with that being said, before we get started on this week's episode of Poetic Justice, now he's done great for 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Not putting his Chip Powell foot in his Chip Powell mouth. I think he may have here.
Okay.
But he says roll with it. He said he believes in it, so we will see. Okay. But I just want to add a disclaimer before I roll this. The thoughts and views of Poetic Justice and Chip Powell do not necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the cast of the Preferred Experience. So you got an issue with this, take it up with Horace Powell Jr., better known as Chip.
Welcome to another episode of Poetic Justice. I'm on my own this week. Chip Powell, Lewis Mills is off somewhere. He didn't mention anything about festivals or anything, but I think he's just going out there maybe doing a vision quest to find himself. I don't know. We'll hear from him next week, hopefully. But, since I've started this show and, I'm kind of talking to myself here and nobody really around, but I've gotten a lot of phone calls from women. Women call me saying, look, Chip, we see your love of poetry and we wonder, do other men have this love? And I usually say, no, they don't. I mean, it's just a passion that kind of Lewis and I share and not many men have it. But they turn around and they ask me, how, Chip, what can I do to get a man? What, from a man's point of view, what can I do? And I thought, gosh, I thought of Rosemarie Diomedio. I mean, instantly. I know the poem she writes, and this one right here is just such a And I'll be honest with you, I'm not reciting this totally like I normally do my poems, because this one was kind of back there in the back. But I thought immediately about, so all the women out there that are listening, and I know there are thousands of fans, thousands of female listeners, especially since Lewis has come on board. But it's called Sweet Dreams, and each sentence is after one of the letters of Sweet Dreams. So the S says, "You are so special to me." See, you got to make your man feel special, so you got to tell him that. W, you are a wonderful man who I love wholeheartedly. E, I am in ecstasy when I am with you. See, even men need to hear that eroticism that you have out there. The next E, every touch energizes and electrifies my body. T, your kisses are tantalizing and terrific and taste like sweet wine. D, you, my darling, I save all my kisses for you. See, you got to make your man feel special and know that you're saving everything for him. R, I love having romantic evenings with you. E, our evenings are so very enjoyable. A, you are awesome and I love having adventures with you. M, I cherish our magnificent moments all the time. S, I love when we snuggle and feel the sensual energy. That right there. Now I can say it all together, but I felt like we need to highlight the letters of Sweet Dreams by Rosemarie Diomedio. Fantastic poet. And listen, make your man feel like that. Tell him these words, and you might get lucky later on. But don't forget to make that sandwich after. Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Strichik, I'm very uncomfortable right now, and I believe that he may have set the movement back a solid 10 years.
How did he know us when I read that to Robert every night?
Well, you know, like I said, I don't know if that strengthens your resolve or crushes your spirit.
We've got to improve our education system. I think he's a product.
You know, like,
we got to come up.
like I said, you know, Chip has done a fantastic job with Poetic Justice for 9 straight episodes. You know, we have to expect for him to go off the rails at some point in time.
Well, because Lewis wasn't here to.
Yeah, and Lewis,
really
I think that was the biggest issue is Lewis wasn't here to anchor him down, because we know Chip's a wild card when he's on his own.
We can't let him do it anymore without Lewis present.
Yeah, I think that's going to be
his anchor.
Yeah, we got to get at least Bruce Kilo, get somebody in here.
Somebody's got to sub in when Lewis can't be.
Yeah, to keep him anchored.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Strichik, while that was a horrible example of the educational system in this area. The way we close the show each week is with a motivational minute by one of the pillars of our athletics, of our academic and athletic system here in the county, Donny Burnett. We all love Coach Donny Burnett, and he closes us out to get us ready to go face the rest of the weekend next week with his motivational minute. So let's go ahead and get that now, Stacy.
This is Coach Donny Burnett, and this is today's motivational minute. If you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. Teachers affect eternity. No one can tell where their influence stops. This is Coach Donny Burnett, and that's today's motivational minute.
If I'm borrowing a line from Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, just when we thought the show couldn't do things any dumber, he goes and says something like that and totally redeems himself. So
That's pretty good.
Right. Teachers have an
it's amazing. It's amazing how Donny is able to know what the topic of the week is and gear his
deliver
and gear his motivational minute to that topic. He just every time he comes up with right dead on point.
He does. Well, Tracy, we are very grateful for your time today. I think this has been enlightening for every listener about the things that's going on in the pre-K world and how our education system is making strides to come up. And that's on the state level, the federal level, but also right here in Autauga County. There's a lot of things we can do. And congratulations once again for winning your election and becoming the District 1 Board of Education representative.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been enjoyable.
It has been enjoyable for us, well, enlightening as well. The first doctor we've had on the show. And I don't know when we'll have another one quite this spectacular. So
you're so kind.
So for Dr. Tracy Strichik and for the Millzer over there, touching those buttons, I'm Will Barrett saying, as always, good night, God bless, and go Lions.
All right, that's going to do it for this week. Man, Will, love you coming in, pinch hitting, and dude, you hit a grand slam tonight.
Well, expect nothing less from me, Daryl. I'm the best.